Good morning. You're probably wondering why there's a coffee guy standing here talking to a number of automotive people here. And as Chris was mentioning, prior to joining Starbucks about 4.5 years ago, I spent 15 years in automotive, 7 of which were in a tier 1 company running supply chain in Europe, and 8 years doing consulting work primarily for OEMs in the US. So what I tried to do and what Louis asked me to do is to do some comparisons between the industry that I used to be in and the industry that I'm in now is in retail. And one of the subtext under in the agenda is what can automotive learn from retail, and what can retail learn from automotive. And I'm not going to, I'm not in a position to really answer the question for you. I think what I'll try to do is highlight some of the differences, and would invite you to think about what you're doing in your company and what's different and what can you use, what can't you use, and then hopefully in the discussion we can go into that in a little bit more detail. So it's probably good to give a little bit of background what a Starbucks supply chain looks like and what the Starbucks supply chain in EMEA looks like. This is a fairly busy slide, and but it kind of gives you the geographic range of what we're serving. So the countries highlighted in green: UK, France, Germany, Netherlands, Austria, Switzerland. We're responsible for fine distribution to all the stores. So, and then we work with a number of partners in other markets where we're still developing, and they're doing the fine distribution, and we deliver the key products to them. You probably can't really quite read the number of stores. We have 2,000 stores in EMEA. Which is about 10% of the total Starbucks stores, 20,000 over globally. Really, the UK is one of our largest markets with 700 stores, and so that kind of gives you an impression of what it looks like. Then, what are our supply chain characteristics? And first of all, a Starbucks supply chain is delivering everything that you need in a Starbucks store. So that includes not only the cups and the coffee and the syrups. We deliver fresh sandwiches, food. We deliver all of the utensils that are used in the store, and we also deliver all of the equipment and building materials, etc., that is used in the store. And I think one of the key challenges for us is that we have 2,000 unique retail points that we serve, and that's not only the stores that you might be familiar with. We also deliver into the CPG channel, and through the CPG channel into the supermarkets. We deliver food service and hospitality, hotels, etc., as well as office solutions. So if I'm one of the things that we're developing very rapidly in Europe is for large headquarters, etc., to provide you an on-site solution for your coffee needs. So in terms of what we're dealing with is about 1,200 active SKUs that rotate very, very rapidly in and out, and I'll come back to that later. And also, we're dealing with temperature-controlled supply chains for a certain portion, which is very fresh, daily-made sandwiches and dairy, etc. One of the key things, and that's probably somewhat of a different to an automotive supply chain, is we have 2,000 retail points, and they order every day, and they expect us to deliver 2 days later. So we have a very, very short frozen period, if you might call it that. And then within our core products, we also have 6 promotional periods throughout the year. So when we rotate in promotional specific products into our warehouses, into the stores, and we rotate certain products in and out. And the way that we're being measured is we're being measured on every single order, and we're being measured on whether we got it 100% right or not. So if we miss one sandwich, it's a 0. So it's a pretty stern measure in terms of how you measure supply chain performance. This again is a reasonable busy slide and wasn't quite, I didn't have the time to pretty it up for this conference and pulled it off of one of the slides. It kind of gives you an overview of how do we achieve that. So we're dealing with a global supply chain. Obviously, coffee is grown around the world. It's a natural product. We don't determine the growth cycles. We get the crop, when it's ready to come in. We have a roasting plant in Amsterdam, for which we roast all the coffee for Europe and Middle East. And we also get about 30% of our supply from the US, as I mentioned before, is we're 10% of the global Starbucks. So there are certain products that we basically lift off of contracts that we have in the US. And then we get a large amount of, most of our merchandise product is coming from the Far East. So we're very similar in terms of, from a supply chain perspective, our global reach and all the challenges that go along with that. So we have 2 main distribution centers. We're working with a select number of service providers. Had some discussions earlier in sessions about do we do everything with one provider, or we pick providers based on what we believe they can do best. And so we've chosen for using a best of breed type of approach, where we're looking at service providers that can service best in the markets that we need them for. So in essence, we get 2 central warehousing locations, and then we have cross docks, for instance, in Paris, but also in some of the other countries, where we merge in fresh food, dairy, local products, and then consolidate that into deliveries into the stores. So that's the overall scope and how it operates. And the key question that Louis was asking me is saying, what's different? So I think one is we're dealing with a really big spread of independent demand points. So rather than say, okay, well, everything automotive tends to be somewhat of a pyramid where it all comes together on the assembly line, and we have the complexity on the inbound side. We have an equal complexity on the outbound side, because we might have the right product, but we might have it in the wrong place, or we might have it on the wrong time. So our customers make a buying decision every single day. And if we cannot fulfill that demand, we basically lose the sale. So it's a perishable demand. We can't keep it till tomorrow. Tomorrow's too late. And then secondly, so on top of the fact that we need to get it right in the right place in the right time, we also have, we tend to have fairly large swings in demands. And that can be related to, there's a festival in town, there's conferences, other events. One of the things that affects it, for instance, is the weather. And I'll give you an example. Is normally speaking, we have a certain ratio between hot beverages, the espressos, cappuccinos we serve, and cold beverages like refreshers or frappuccinos. Now, we had a situation last August and September that it was unseasonably hot, not only in the UK, but in France, in Germany, in the Netherlands, basically all over Europe for 8 weeks. So basically we had to flip our supply chain completely upside down to be able to satisfy that demand and sustain that and then come back to a normal period after that. So there really is a premium on being able to react, respond, and adapt to the demand. And then part of what allows us to do that is that we're looking for flexibility in capacity, in distribution capacity, in manufacturing capacity, where we can react to those kind of changes in the market. So we structure our contracts in certain ways as well to say, well, there's minimum that we're comfortable with, and there's an upside that is possible, and we don't want to get burned on the downside, and we don't want to get burned on the upside. So it really is a key thing. And then on top of that, as I mentioned, we have very, very fast product introduction cycles. So when we're talking about putting a new product into market, yes, it's tested, and usually it goes through certain tests in market. But once a decision is made, we need to get it out, and we need to get it out very, very fast to all of the distribution points in EMEA. One of the comments that I heard in one of the sessions yesterday was that from a tier one and from a service provider perspective, we're following the OEMs, and if the OEMs are go somewhere, then we're going to go there as well. Part of the challenge that we have is that we're responsible for delivery to a number of accounts, and so we need to establish whether we can deliver before we can sign the contract. So we actually have to build the capability, and the capability allows us to sell. So kind of summing up what that looks like is that for us and for our supply chain, the key tenets are obviously it's speed, it's getting fulfilling orders quickly, it's agility, it's being able to respond to changes in demand, changes in geography. Obviously, in logistics, reliability is always number one, because there's no price for doing it right one day and not doing it right the next day. You need to do it right every single day. We talked about anticipation and anticipating where the business is going and making sure we build the roadwork to get there. And then coming back to the opening presentation from Volkswagen, part of our corporate mission is care for the environment and the places that we operate. So we do look at sustainability and efficiency of our network and our solutions, and it's one of our key messages that we're looking for. So that's what our supply chain looks like, and that's kind of what, from my perspective, what I see are some of the things that are different. And looking forward to discussing your point of view after the next speakers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan. Really interesting, I think, just to get a look into a completely different industry and supply chain. I mean, some things there I'm sure would look very familiar to many of you, whether it's centralized warehousing and cross-docking. Some things are a bit different, the perishable demand we spoke of. I think for me that, it's something some of us in this room would be preaching to the choir, but the fact that logistics is the competitive advantage in many ways for Starbucks, I'm not sure that that's something that everyone in the automotive industry would really say at every level, unfortunately. But I think we all have reasons why we think it should. But in Starbucks, you don't have that. You don't have a day. In fact, Jan and I were talking yesterday about a Starbucks on Oxford Circus where, never mind a day, if you don't have it in 5 minutes, there's 5 other coffee chains just around the corner you go to. So logistics really at the fore there. So I look forward to further discussions in the Q&A. But our next presentation, we have Kay Biebler, from Director of Rolling Stock for Solaris Bus and Coach. Oops.
Thanks. So first of all, welcome here after 2 days of meeting. And then I also would like to thank for the opportunity to speak in front of you, because normally the car group is not always very close to the rail group, also not politically. So far it might be quite interesting to exchange a little bit that. And the previous speech, if we would have the throughput time, or if Starbucks would have the throughput time of us, nearly 2 years, then I don't know how the coffee would look like. Minimum, it would be cold. Before we start, I would like to use some words about Solaris. It's a quite new company, and most of the people think we are doing solar panels, but the name comes after a Roman written by Stanisław Lem. It's a Polish company, and should show the future. First of all, some words. It has been founded, it's a family-owned business by the family of Olszewski. And Mr. Olszewski started in 1981 his career in Berlin as a plant manager, later of Neoplan. Then at the end, he created Neoplan Polska. Then Neoplan was taken over by MAN, and MAN said, we close it, or you buy also the 30% shares from us. And then he bought everything what he could get, the 30%, and so we became Solaris. And then the next step was basically that the family moved to Berlin. We developed our own products made with a stainless steel car body. Then we came he said basically the diesel is dead, electricity is living. So far we invested a lot in alternative power supplies. We have basically everything from gas over hybrid, parallel, serial, and we will also see this summer the first commercial bus line with electric buses with a loading system, contactless in Braunschweig, in the commercial traffic. So some words about the company. As I said, it's a Polish company, 2,400 employees. I'm representing the rail group, it's roughly 10%. And I also must say we are just in the beginning, and without the colleagues from the rubber group, we call them rubber group, basically it also would be hard to survive. Basically we have 2 assembly plants, one for buses, one for trams, and we have also 2 body shell factories. In one we are doing more carbon steel for the car bodies for the trams, and one we are using for stainless steel body shells for buses. Basically, we have 28 countries. We are rapidly growing. We had an increase last year. We had 1,000 buses produced. And this year, or last year, 2012, we produced roughly 1,000. 2013, we produced 1,300. So far, also the supply chain has to follow there. And there are also a lot of activities to make basically the organizational frame around that. It's not so easy. So, some market numbers. Basically in Poland, we are number 1 with a market share above 50%. Even in Germany, what most people do not know, we are bus maker number 3, of course, Mercedes, MAN, that are the bigger ones, but we have roughly 18%. We deliver to Munich, to Düsseldorf. When you go to your airplane, you will go on Solaris buses over the airfield. Here you see, again, what I already have mentioned a little bit. The development path started with licenses from Neoplan, then gas. And we see basically the future in electromobility. And then Mr. Olszewski said, you know what, only buses? Too much changing demand. We also should go to trams. And instinctively, he did something very smart, and I will come to that why. You see it here. That every, let's say, every tool to transport people has its optimum. So far, if you have the city traffic, you need to estimate how many people want to go from A to B. And also you have to predict the future, but the future means basically 5 years or more. If you have new cities, satellite cities or so, then you have to assume and also to create the flexibility for your future transport system. And when you look at this, you see here the bus, 1,500 people in one direction, that is always the tact of the vehicle, and then you come already to trams or to light rail. Light rail basically that are mostly high floor vehicles with an extra track, but belonging basically also to the class of light rail vehicles. And so far, that would make sense, and the next step from us would be also maybe to go in the direction of metros. So and here you see we have classically 8-meter buses, 12-meter buses, 18-meter buses that should be Salzburg with a typical metro style, and then already the trams are starting with roughly 20-meter. So, and what is also important, if you negotiate, you also negotiate with the municipalities. It's basically the same customer, but there's a big difference because buses is more like product business. Of course, you have different versions you discuss with a purchasing guy. As a railway business, it's somehow special. You discuss always with the board. It's also more visible for the people. If there's a problem, you are in the newspaper. You see Siemens, Alstom, Stadler, everybody has his interesting stories to tell. So that are our products. Strategy was quite simple. 2009, a prototype for the Polish market has been developed. And I now can say on the first fair, it even was not running, not able to run. But of course, it was not visible, but it was like it is. First vehicle, Poland, national market. Then that is Tramino Poznan, 45 pieces, still the same market, but larger numbers. The big difference if you only supply a prototype or larger numbers. Next step, we are the first company, you see the first vehicle for Jena, the first foreign supplier of light rail vehicles in Germany. Now the second one, the Spanish CAF came in, and that means that the market in Germany, in Switzerland, in Austria, which have been somehow protected markets, are opening more and more, and it's always a matter of references. It only takes a couple of years, then everybody is in. Also the Chinese are coming, they are already in Turkey, and the Korean are in Ireland. So then you see also the same strategy, Jena, just 5 pieces. Then that is just in the moment under production. We will see it probably on InnoTrans, that is Braunschweig, where we also supply the battery buses. That is basically Braunschweig. It's the same concept. It's a former MAN and AEG concept developed on climatization. You have different normatives for today. You have climatization also for the drivers. And that is a special vehicle for the Polish market, special bogies here in. And that is a new tram system. What we see and we will come to that in the next slides, that we have increasing networks, but I come to that later. First of all, I want to show you this slide I made when I started at Solaris a couple of months, you can say 1.5 years ago, to teach basically our bus group about the differences. Because if you discuss about headcount, about processes, there are much bigger differences than even Mr. Olszewski believed there are. First of all, we have in buses, 1,300 buses a year, roughly 140 customers, and trams 4. And that is not only the case for small, like Solaris, also for big ones. You see throughput times, 24 months. So, and so on and so far. You see, of course, also the price difference. So you can basically buy 10 buses for 1 tram. By the way, that is the average price of nowadays. If you go to Siemens or Bombardier or to the famous one, you can add roughly $500,000 to $1 million minimum, sometimes even 1.5. So we come also later to why that is the case. That is the development of the fleet worldwide. Roughly 40,000 light rail vehicles are running. You see a slight increase. In reality, it's growing much more. France had in the 80s only 1 tram system. Now they have 18. So far, more and more new systems are installed. Also China is coming now. That's a special thing about our market. You see that are all different gauges which are existing. So far, if heavy rail, high speed are complaining about the different conditions, what should you say to this? So then that are the most one you have. That is a Russian broad gauge. That is a classical German or European one, and that is the same gauge like you have in heavy rail. You have different voltage, different lengths, and widths. And you see basically you have 50 countries in the world, and in Germany you have 64. What is also special in Germany, the case that it comes from the horse tram. And that's why you have every city being different than the other one. In France, they say, you can go with that. We do not offer in Germany. We have 150 meter radius because that are all new systems. You simply do not offer. And that was the chance for smaller companies like us. So then you see also how will the network develop. There are different prognoses worldwide. We are talking about 22,000 kilometers. There are different assumptions. The basic message of this slide is it's also growing. So the big players, you see Bombardier, Alstom, Siemens, of course, and we with Solaris belonging here. And we also gave ourselves a limitation. We don't want to grow unlimited. It's also a matter of cash, development of the people, and you see in 4 years, roughly 4,000 vehicles have been sold. And it's nice, our supervisory board asked me, when you will reach 1,000 trams? And I said, no, that is not probable because that is a yearly production of the whole market. And we as a newcomer belonging in that area will not happen. But the tram is quite complex. What you see here, that is a tram of Jena. You have the body shell, that is basically our core business, and then you have different subsystems. You have the car body, doors, the train control and management system. You have the traction containers, climatization. And what you see is we have nearly 400 suppliers and roughly 6,000 open positions in our system. System means the central document to lead the business. I have it with me, but I put it not on the slide because I do not know who is sitting here. That sheet of paper, Excel-based, that is 1 year. So far we are counting not after seconds, we are counting after weeks. And of course, the methods department is going a little bit more down, but under a day, we do not think about. So then let's have a look at our suppliers. We are doing roughly 400 million euro. Our suppliers, Liebherr, 9 billion. And then you can also imagine that it is not always easy to deal with them, especially as we are delivering customized vehicles. But the market is close, and you never know how the market will develop. I mean, Bombardier, where I was working for, also was once a very small company. Or look at Stadler. So what is a production? Classical one, steel structure. And here on that picture, you see basically the final assembly. And that is how we control our final assembly. Every morning with a meeting. And we are just taking off what has been done. So that is a way of homologation. Due to the time reason, I don't want to go into more details. But you see, it's quite complex. And our bus people said, yeah, we are going in a bus doing sometimes like this, and then you have the homologation for Europe. Here in Germany, you have, that is an example for Baden-Württemberg and Thuringia, not for Europe. It's only 2 countries of Germany, and Siemens is waiting, for instance, for 2 years for homologation. And it's increasing because they want to standardize it, and you should not believe that they reduce the requirements. They want to standardize it, but of course on a higher level. That means the tram is also homologated like a high-speed train. And that costs money. It's also a little bit, from my taste, a political thing. So, classical process flow in the supply chain. We have here the project management controlling it as well as quality. So, what to say, and that is my last slide, is what is important for us. We have to be quite simple, like the Excel file. We have really to focus on key element. You have to be experienced, a lot of feeling. Our people, when we talk about the timeline in buses, they get a heart attack. Months delay, oh my hell. Now yeah, okay, a month later we have it under control. It's only 2 weeks. And so far you need a lot of experience. It's an industry, it's 180 years old. Now yeah. So then we have removed the flow lines. When I was working for Bombardier, we were in 1997, and I will close with that. We took some old car manufacturers' ideas away. We moved from a flow line to stationary assembly with cost savings of 30–40%. The break-even point that we have calculated with universities is about roughly 300 vehicles. Below that, you should make stationary assembly, above it, flow line. So, then I would like to finish, and I'm looking forward for an interesting discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Biebler. Again, really interesting, I think, to get a look at a related but quite different industry, and I think there's a lot of stuff we'll return to in the Q&A. But before that, we have our last speaker, Olivier Rateau from Jeffco, formerly worked based in China, and now here again back in Europe. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Very glad to be here today. I'm working at Jeffco for 15 years already. Been in charge of car distribution in many countries. And I'm currently working and dedicated to the two-wheelers industry, which is a specific market that Jeffco is addressing for years already. And we are glad that we are distributing in Europe all kinds of vehicles for the two-wheelers industry. Actually, what is the point that we wanted to raise today is what can we learn from the current two-wheelers logistic changes that may apply to car industry in the future. This is actually how we wanted to introduce those today. So, most of you have seen that vehicles' body is changing. It is something that is pretty new. It has appeared a few years ago or even a few months ago in some of our cities like Paris, London, or whatever. Traditional product range cars still existing. It's still 99% of the market, but we've seen in our streets a praising product range. I've put it here as three pictures, the Renault Twizy and the Volkswagen Nils, and there is the Toyota iRoad. Those are not only prototypes, because you can buy a Renault Twizy today. Those are very specific vehicles that doesn't have actually the same shape as the vehicle that we are used to transport. And this is the subject that we wanted to tackle today. So actually, those changes, I mean radical changes on the shape and of the body of a vehicle, the size of the vehicle, those are changes that occurred in the two-wheelers industry already. We've put in here a few pictures. You have the range of the BMW product on the top, which is to be considered as the traditional product range. Those are only two-wheelers. It goes from the big scooter to the big bikes. And I would say that for years and years, this is what motorbikes are, simply. And what has occurred for the past years is that many new players or existing players have launched new kind of vehicles. The first one that we saw was the Piaggio three-wheelers, three-wheel vehicle that you see on the right, which is actually this one, you may know. Now the competition is following, and we have newcomers in this market, and also I would say the big surprise came from manufacturers like Polaris or Bombardier Recreational Product (BRP) that has launched vehicles that were not existing before, like side-by-side vehicle, which is a small all-terrain vehicle, or this Spider, which is also pretty weird, and those are vehicles that we didn't know before. And so what is interesting is to focus on what are the impacts of those new vehicles on the supply chain, and definitely most of all on the network. So this is what I'm going to focus on right now. What kind of network is the most suitable to distribute those new cars or those new vehicles? Is the car distribution network and are the car distribution means that we know as per today suitable for this new market range? So definitely this slide to enlighten the fact that we are talking about similar kind of product. I will say that in addition to that, what we've seen on the market that we were not used to also are very large motorbikes, also like Victory or Indians or Harley Davidson bikes. Those bikes also are to be compared with those kind of vehicles. They are very large. All right. So car carriers may not be suitable for those new vehicles. That's actually a fact. Because those vehicles are opened. From time to time they are open, and the car carrier is open also, so vehicles get dirt. They get dirty, and those kind of vehicles are pretty hard to clean. The body is pretty complex. It's not like a car that you can wash quite easily. Definitely there is a matter with the size of the vehicles, the gauge, I would say, the width. Those vehicles are so small, they are meant to carry only one passenger, the driver. And definitely they are so small that they won't climb on the truck. So definitely this is probably the biggest problem that we have when we want to use a car carrier to distribute those vehicles. And also because those are small series, and the dealers are not used to buy 12 of them, so they ask for one car, one vehicle or two vehicles. And definitely the car, I would say the car trailer, is not really convenient when you have to drop one vehicle each time. It's pretty heavy, it's pretty complex, it costs much more than a regular car. All right, so for those who thought that I won't promote Jeffco, they were wrong. Here we go. It doesn't work. Yeah, okay, Jeffco. So here's a nice picture because what we learned in the past, for those past years, is that we had to, I would say, transform the general cargo network into a vehicle distribution network. And this is going to be the end of my presentation. I'm going to focus on what is new when you're using a general cargo distribution network, a group age network, or a LTL network. What is new when you're trying to deliver vehicles to dealers? So we see those 6 points, or 5 points, sorry, that we raised. The two first points, those are points that a general cargo network is used to cope with, but then you have very specific points after a while. Fitted packaging, we're going to see some pictures. Suitable handling tools, ad valorem insurance, driver training, and dealers management. Fitted packaging, definitely those vehicles are usually packaged and packed, and there are many arbitrage to be made regarding the fact that even for the manufacturer, is it going to be a carton box, which is a pretty expensive carton box, may cost 100 euro. Or are we going to use some reusable containers like Cradle? This is the first point. And definitely we have questions that are raising For boxes, is the box strong enough to be manipulated many times into a general cargo network with a lot of cross-docking? And if you're using a cradle, is your network, is your general cargo groupage network fitted to handle a reverse logistics? Because definitely this is a very expensive asset, a cradle, and there are many parties on field that are wishing to keep it. So it's hard to cope with this reverse logistics. We brought here one of our cradles that you probably saw into the coffee room. This is a cradle that has been designed by Jeffco, and for the record, it is the first cradle that is meant to transport three-wheels vehicles. You see here different kind of cradle that may be used, and you see here some export boxes. Definitely the adequation between the packaging and the network, and also the requirements of the dealers, is very important. And this is something that we don't know in the, I would say, normal car industry transportation. Okay, the specificities are wider. Okay, suitable handling tools. This is very important because those are large vehicles that you are going to transport into a general cargo network, and you need some tail lift. And actually, the regular tail lift is usually not big enough, not large enough. And for many of those vehicles, you need some, I would say, larger tail lift. Those tail lifts that are going on the top, to the top of the truck. Okay, this is not common. Here you see the tail lift, and you see the double deck truck. Okay, because also stackability is not always feasible. So the use of a double deck trailer is also, I would say, an asset. Okay, I would say that a double deck trailer is somehow looking like a car transport carrier. And this is Moffats. Also, this is a very, very important matter because, okay, you are using a regular truck, but then you are delivering a dealer, and most of the dealers are not equipped with their own Fenwicks, and they are not meant to discharge a general cargo truck. So it is now quite, I would say, becoming a standard to use a Moffat truck. The problem is that Moffat trucks are pretty popular in Northern Europe, but they are not in Southern Europe. Pretty hard to find some Moffats in Spain, Portugal, or Italy. And definitely one general cargo company that will be in charge of distributing those kind of new vehicles may adapt its networks and find new providers. Then, and I will finalize on this, we are talking about ad valorem insurance, like for cars, because those products are pretty expensive. So our customers, they don't want to be refunded on CMR base. And actually, training our drivers and our network to handle products that are under ad valorem insurance is something new. Okay? And it takes some time because you have to train everybody, all the branches and all the drivers. So for that, we also, at Jeffco, we took the best of of what we know from the car industry, including, the quality insurance, the quality system, the use of some very specific, I would say, damage reports, and we adapt those. This know-how to those new vehicles. And I will end with this, and this is pretty important also. General cargo network is not used to build up the same relationship with the dealers as a specialized car logistic network. Okay, as all of you know, the dealer is the customer of your customer. Normally you transport cars on behalf of the OEM, and then you're delivering a dealer. This is pretty specific, and you don't find such kind of relationship into a general cargo network. So it takes time, and it also creates difficulties when you are delivering vehicles to dealers with a general cargo network. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Olivier. I think there we've had quite an interesting range of presentations from a supply chain that's moving through 2,000 stores, daily orders, down to the minute of critical timing, train manufacturer with quite long lead times or overall production and homogenization times, and then a two-wheeler market, 1% of the market, but as you saw, requiring almost an entirely new network and equipment, which is, I'm imagining a cost as well as a logistics challenge. So again, three interesting perspectives related to and also very different in some ways to the automotive logistics industry that we're all dealing with. We've got plenty of time now for questions. We can, as we said, we can answer from the floor. We can post questions online. Of course, I have questions as well. Anyone from the floor like to start us off? Right in the back.
Okay, good morning. My name is Alexander from Amazon Germany. It's a question to Jan, actually. So speaking about your product lines and the variation in volume and the seasonality of your business, so how do you prepare and anticipate volume changes in product lines, and how do you scale your supply chain to that?
For us, there's two types of variability. So there's planned variability and there's unplanned variability. And so we basically, as I was mentioning, we're moving through promotional cycles. We have a product introduction planning and implementation framework that we use to plan and forecast the changes that we're anticipating. And obviously, what we do then is validate throughout the supply chain if there's constraints and can we deliver it at the time required. And then on top of that, as I mentioned, we also are dealing with unplanned variability. There's two ways of dealing with that, which is either you buffer for it, or you need to build the flexibility in your supply chain to react to it. So both from a delivery perspective, but also from a manufacturing perspective, you need to choose either or. If you don't have the agility in your network to respond, then you have to buffer. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. Other questions from the floor? Right in the middle, please.
Hartmut Haubrich from company Inform, also to Jan. Would you mind to share an order of magnitude, what is the expense of logistics in the overall Starbucks cost scheme?
Sorry, no.
Thank you for a clear answer.
Okay.
Maybe, we can get into details, but can we, if relative to automotive, would you say that it's a higher proportion of the spend or a lower?
It's probably comparable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry.
Which are not going to be specific to cost, I guess. Yeah. I wanted a question to the panel, kind of going to what Jan brought up in the beginning about competitive advantage, or what happens if, how important logistics is in a sense to the daily business. And again, we can compare it to automotive or not. We know from Jan, obviously, that logistics is certainly a competitive advantage at Starbucks. Would you say that it's more of a competitive advantage relative to automotive, similar, different, and perhaps each of the panel can give their perspective?
I'm not sure if you can say if it's more or less. I think there's some different dimensions that is around ability to serve the customer. One, doing it in a cost-efficient manner. Two, and then logistics is really tying together all the bits and all the stages in the supply chain. So I think in all of those aspects, logistics can play, an important role and can be a differentiator if you're able to deliver, as I mentioned. So we're always looking at doing things better, faster, and cheaper. And without having smart ways of delivering that, you're never going to achieve that.
And for Mr. Biebler, I mean, with a product that takes 2 years to build, or from kind of order to delivery, let's say, where does logistics play that role in there? How important is it?
I would say the logistics, of course, play an important role, but I would say it's a different challenge, as also your suppliers are more custom-made. And as they also underlie a very complicated homologation process. Basically, the whole production process is structured after weeks or even after process steps. And the agreement is when we have the date to start with the final assembly, which can last 3 months, and train building maybe over 3 weeks, and train building 6 weeks, we agree that the material has to be there at the start of this. For special components which are very expensive, of course, we try to cluster that, but basically it's by far not so advanced. We have also a concept, always DDU, where the suppliers just deliver to our facility.
Okay.
But I also must say, what I'm talking about was a tram business. If you look at ICX or high-speed trains, it's a different league. Or you also cannot compare Metro New York with 1,000 cars, with maybe 100 cars. If you spend as one-time cost also to prepare the logistics, let's say 2 or 3 million for Metro New York, it may give some advantage. If you do it the same for maybe 3 vehicle Linzer Lokalbahn, you are dead. You should save some money for an offer. That's why also, even in the railway industry, you have to adapt your logistic chain. I mean, also we are using Exapta, that's all. And of course, Bombardier and Siemens are using SAP. But at the end, we have to earn money, and you have to apply your chain to that you are able to do so.
Olivier, do you want to add anything there? Do you want to? No. Okay. Any other questions from the floor? We have, yeah, in the back there.
Hello, Frank Ritz-Sape in Logistics. This is one for Olivier. We have a number of motorcycle contracts, moving things around the world. The movement systems you developed, they're basically from factory to dealers. Do they look at containers in any way, and what's the sort of level of saving you'd estimate you'd achieve using your handling systems compared to what's done currently conventionally?
Actually, it's a good point that there is no one-size-fits-all solution regarding packaging. It really depends on the distance between the factory and the consumers. And definitely we managed to reach the higher productivity and the higher savings when we are mixing different packaging technology. So for instance, when we have a very long loop, not using reusable packaging, but using specific packaging like wooden boxes, etc., for overseas shipments. And as far as we are getting closer to the dealer, it may be useful to use a cradle. But for instance, if you are delivering cheap materials, or if you are delivering to dealers that are very small in downtown cities, then maybe naked distribution is the best packaging.
Thank you.
The level of saving is pretty important because, as I said to you, a carton box may cost up to 100 euro when it's a custom carton box that is dedicated to a heavy bike or heavy product. And you may save a big part of this money when using reusable packaging. Specifically, if you include the fact that the dealer won't have or won't charge the OEM for the waste management. So it also depends, the level of saving also depends on the scope of your analysis.
And Olivier, the trucks that are now used to move the two-wheelers, is this sort of a modular concept? Are you also moving other cargo in those trucks, or are they now effectively dedicated trucks?
Definitely we are moving other cargoes. That's the point. We are dropping smaller volumes. So it is, the point is that this specific cargo must enter into the general network. And otherwise it's too costly.
Yeah, maybe, and for the rest of the panel too, but in particular, can you maybe tell us a little bit about your transport purchasing approach? Do you use an LLP? Do you look to end-to-end solutions? How does that compare maybe a little bit with your experience in automotive?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, we're working with a number of logistics partners. We have a very small in-house organization. Most of it is outsourced. Both from a warehousing perspective and from a transportation perspective, we do work with lead logistics providers, and as the overall architect of the inbound flows and the outbound flows. So the fine distribution that I was talking about is very, very country specific. So we tend to work with country organizations. It's different in the UK than in Germany and in France. But beyond that, on the inbound, we deal with regional partners that really are, the conductor of the inbound flows, if you will.
Okay.
So we are basically using the logistic companies of the producer of the material, as they also are very often supplier of automotive. Then of course it's easier for us just to adapt, and then we control them by a date. And for the outbound logistics, it's always a special transport over 40, 50 meters. You can only run at night. You have to look at the radius. You even need to change the factory as the vehicle is getting longer and longer, up to 75 meters. That is the upper limit. And so far, not special. We have also Kanban systems, also filled by the suppliers of that. So far, it's not so artificial. And if you have a problem, then we simply, we have also trucks available if needed, then we simply go there. Or if you have a bearing, maybe it's a nice story. We bought bearings from SKF and from Steyr, and we got delivery problems. And then they said, you know what, we are producing 2,000 bearings a day, and now you come with a special bearing for the whole order of 72. Aluminium oxide coated for electrical isolation, and now you expect us that we open now our big machinery for your 72 units. So, and you even don't want to pay the price. Naya, okay. And then the idea was that it goes over Italy. Prague was in there. We made the contract with a Polish local company, of course. They called us for help at the end. That was a story. And they wanted to ship it to the central distribution center. It's in Schweinfurt from SKF. And then it should go to Poland. And I said, you know what? You give us a telephone call. We take a car, come to you, load it in the car, and drive it back. So that was a real life story. We had 4 or 5 nations in, and me as a customer, I was a moderator, because the Austrian guys and the Italy guys, since World War I, now it's not easy, you know. Yeah. So that is how our logistic works. The good news is there's a lot of potential for optimization, but not for any price. It costs money, also the modularization. Why to make a modular tram when you only sell 50 a year? So.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's great. Thank you. Any final questions from the floor? The young, well, not so young man in the back there with all the hair.
Yeah, when I asked one of the gentlemen to attend the conference, they said, as long as you don't ask me any questions. So my first question is to Alexander from Amazon, but also to Jan and Kai, is at what level is your highest logistics or supply chain executive? I'm not even sure if you'll necessarily know, but at Amazon, is there a board member responsible for logistics or supply chain? And the same question would then go to Starbucks and to Solaris.
At least I can answer this one. He's a board member.
The answer for us is yes, he's a board member.
In our case, the purchasing officer and also logistic is with him. He's sitting in the board, but belongs to a board area. He is employee of our financial, or financial, the one who owns the money. So, so that is, by the way, also one of the points. I mean, we are also learning what we also should change, but we are in the process to arrange it because he owns 75% of the costs. And so far.
Yeah. It's that one that owns the money who tends to own most people in this room as well, I think, one way or another. Maybe just one last question from my side. It's sort of, we didn't address it specifically, Jan, but the transport modes, I mean, is it sea freight on the deeps for your international legs? Perhaps that's obvious, but are you using perhaps more air freight than we might see in automotive? And also locally for the European, are you using trailer on ro-ro? Is it train? And yeah.
So for the international, it would be the same structure as with automotive. Is we want to avoid air freight whenever we can, and sometimes we don't have a choice, but it's not a standard mode that we're using. As for the road transportation, we have a number of different structures that we use. So our fine distribution is either dedicated network or shared user network, and also our inbound is FTLs where we can, LTLs where we don't have the volume, and then we use some intermodal, but not very large, because the distances between our distribution centers or from the ports are not very far.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that's probably we're going to leave it there for the questions because we still have some voting to do. But I want to thank our panel, one, for their great presentations, also for their time. I mean, they've come to an automotive event, not necessarily directly related, so I really think we owe them an extra round of applause. Now we're actually going to move on again to an interactive voting. So I guess, again, a reminder for everyone in the room, if you want to log in using your smartphone or your tablet or a laptop, you can participate this way. You have your badge number on your badge. Another reminder to those of you watching live from around the world, there's a delay, so if you want to participate, please scroll down and look at the polling questions as they appear and answer then, because if you wait for me to read them out, you'll be about 30 seconds behind and you'll miss the period in which you can vote. And for you, everyone in the audience looking, you have a box where the questions will appear, and then below it you scroll down where the results appear. And it varies a little in the way it's displayed depending on what kind of device you're using, but that's more or less how you do it. So if we could load up the questions, we'll get started on that. Our first question is from Giadis Wilson. Again, these questions this time have come from our gold sponsors. So the question from Giadis: a first-class logistics service brings better visibility, reduced transport time, improved cube utilization, and helps a sustainable supply chain. How is it paid for? Is it by OEMs, tier suppliers as customers? Is it by LSPs as providers? Is it by cost sharing? or is it by gain sharing? So if you can please vote now. And the results, pretty close actually. I mean, 33% of you, the most, did say it's the traditional model paid by your customers. But a pretty good percentage of you also said it's cost sharing or gain sharing. In fact, together that actually outweighs the OEM tier supplier one, because we don't expect the LSPs to pay for it that much. Okay, next question. It's from Agility. What are the tendencies among OEM tier suppliers with their relationships with logistics service providers? Would you say that it's long-standing relationships and a close integration? Is there an ability to change LSPs quickly, no close integration? Is there an ability to change LSPs quickly but retaining close integration via a generic IT platform? So some nuances to the answers there. By quite some way, more than about half of you saying that it's pretty much changing LSPs quickly and often not a very close relationship. This question comes from Jeffco. Are sourcing and purchasing strategies jeopardizing stronger supply chains or end customer satisfaction? Definitely, somewhat. Not significantly, but not at all. "57% say it's somewhat, 27% say definitely. So a good majority of you would say that at least in some ways the purchasing strategies are having a negative impact on the end customer. This question is from GBA and ABP. Would you share performance information through a neutral third party? No, my information is my complete advantage. No, it would restrict my innovation. Yes, it can only benefit OEMs and LSPs by helping to reduce cost. Or yes, it would help to improve logistics generally. So two ways of saying yes or no there. %, yes, it can only benefit OEMs and LSPs by helping. So the biggest answer is that people would share, but actually, not 30% said no. It's a competitive advantage. So almost a third actually wouldn't share the information. Okay, this is from Chep. You are considering quotes from 2 LSPs. Which would you choose? Which is slightly cheaper, which will create slightly less CO2 than A. So do you go for the cheaper or the more environmentally friendly one? Yeah. Well, at least we know you're honest. Okay, the next question, sorry, not coming up there. Evolution time critical. Many OEMs are moving to 24-hour procedures. Does the resulting pressure on the supply chain and reduced leeway for, pressure on the supply chain and reduced leeway for delay increase risk, though this can be managed? Does it increase risk to the point where premium freight should be made available? Does it increase risk to the point where stoppages are inevitable? Biggest increased risk, though this can be managed, 48%. Okay, next question is from WWL. What further integration of your outbound supply chain can create cost and lead time reduction? Would that come from OEMs sharing their production plans? Would it come from OEMs adjusting production to the needs and flows of vehicle logistics? Would it come from using a 4PL to manage the logistics providers and processes? Would it come from better IT links right through to the dealer? %, better IT links right through to the dealer, by quite a margin, actually. So that goes in line to some of the things that we were talking about yesterday. Next question is from Sovereign Business Integration. What is the biggest restriction to improving your logistics IT systems? Is it business justification? Is it suitable options? Is it time and resource? Or is it cost? Time and resource, 44%. Is the biggest constraint to improving logistics, IT. Next question from Priority Freight. China continues to increase in significance for OEM sales and tier supplier production. What is the risk to them of a Chinese financial or property crash? Is there no risk? Is there a small risk? Are they at risk? Are they in danger? Biggest answer is at risk. So there is actually, despite China's growth, the potential crash of a property market there can actually threaten the industry. Quite an interesting result there. Next question from TNT. This is the last question, I believe. What will have the biggest impact on future supply chains? Will it be consumer requirements, such as shorter lead times? Will it be the drive for cost reduction? Will it be striving for sustainability? Or will it be new technologies, for example, 3D printing? The drive for cost reduction is going to have the biggest impact. So most of you seem to think it's going to be more about cost than innovation. Okay, that was the last of the questions, I believe. So thank you for our sponsors for providing those questions. Thanks again to everyone who participated. I think the results always show us something interesting. We're going to break now for coffee, and then we're splitting again. There's 3 streams. So with that, and then after lunch, in case you were wondering why the tables are round, we come together in round table individual discussions. So look forward to the rest of the day with you. Thank you.